David sat on the steps of a closed store in New York, staring at the cold night sky. The streets were alive with rushing cars and bright lights, but his world felt dark. In his wallet was only one bill left, $5. That was all he had. He pulled the crumpled bill out and held it in his hand. His rent was late. His fridge was empty. He hadn't eaten a proper meal in 2 days. His friends had stopped calling, and the last job interview ended with the same words, "We'll let you know." David sighed. He was tired, but more than that, he was scared. How long could he survive like this? As he stood up and began walking toward his small apartment, he noticed someone sitting outside a cafe. A young woman, maybe his age, with long brown hair, sat on the cold pavement. Her eyes were red, and she looked like she had been crying for hours. A torn bag sat beside her, but it looked empty. David slowed down. She looked lost, broken. When their eyes met, she quickly looked away, embarrassed. "Are you okay?" David asked gently. She shook her head. "No. My bag was stolen, my wallet, my phone, everything. I can't even get home. And no one believes me." Her voice cracked. David felt a sharp pain in his chest. He had almost nothing, yet this stranger had even less right now. He reached into his pocket and touched the last $5 bill. His stomach growled, reminding him that this money could buy him bread, maybe a cheap meal. His survival depended on it. But when he looked at the girl again, shivering in the cold, he remembered all the nights he had felt invisible, when no one cared if he lived or starved. Slowly, he pulled the bill out and held it toward her. "Here," he said. She blinked in shock. "No. I can't take that from you." "It's okay," David said with a weak smile. "I know what it feels like to have nothing. Maybe this can help you get home." Her hands trembled as she accepted it. "Why? Why would you help a stranger?" David looked away, embarrassed. "Because someone should." For a long moment, the girl just stared at him, her eyes wide, her lips pressed tight like she was holding back words. Then, very softly, she whispered something strange. "You don't know what you just did." David frowned. "What do you mean?" But before he could ask more, she stood up quickly, clutching the bill. She looked around nervously, then ran down the street without another word. David stood frozen, confused. The night swallowed her figure, leaving him alone with questions. Back in his apartment, David sat on his bed staring at the empty walls. He couldn't stop thinking about her eyes, her broken voice, and that strange line, "You don't know what you just did." What did she mean? He tried to convince himself it didn't matter. He had given away his last $5, and now tomorrow would be harder. He might go hungry again. But deep inside, a small warmth grew in his chest. For the first time in weeks, he felt like he had done something right. Still, the mystery haunted him. Who was she? Why did she look at him like that? He lay back on his bed, listening to the city noises outside his window. Sirens in the distance, footsteps on the sidewalk, the hum of life moving forward. His stomach growled again, but he ignored it. Eventually, he closed his eyes. But as he drifted into sleep, he couldn't shake the feeling that the stranger was not gone from his life. Something about her words, something about the way she looked at him. It was almost as if she knew something he didn't. The next morning, David woke up early, still hungry, still broke, but strangely restless. He left his apartment and went out looking for work again. Shop after shop, office after office, everywhere was the same answer. "No openings." "Sorry, we're not hiring." "We'll call you." By afternoon, his hope was thin. He walked the streets with heavy steps, ready to give up for the day. And then he froze. Across the street, near the corner bakery, he saw her. The same girl. She wasn't crying now. She was holding a small bag of groceries, scanning the street like she was searching for someone. David's heart jumped. What was she doing here? Why was she looking for him? And why, as she spotted him and started walking quickly toward him, did he feel like his simple act of kindness last night had opened a door to something much bigger, something he wasn't ready for? The answer, he would soon discover, was beyond anything he could imagine. David stood frozen on the sidewalk, his eyes locked on the girl from last night. She crossed the street quickly, her grocery bag swinging by her side. Her face was no longer stained with tears. Instead, she carried a strange mix of relief and urgency. When she reached him, she stopped to catch her breath. "I found you," she said softly. David blinked in surprise. You were looking for me?" She nodded. "Yes. I couldn't stop thinking about what you did yesterday." David scratched the back of his neck, feeling awkward. "It wasn't much. Just $5. Her eyes softened. "It was everything. You gave away your last bit of hope to someone you didn't even know." She held up the grocery bag. "So I wanted to bring this. It's not much, but I thought, maybe you need it more than me." David stared at the bag, stunned. Inside were simple things: bread, milk, a few apples. His throat tightened. No one had done something like this for him in a long time. "You didn't have to," he whispered. "I wanted to," she replied. For the first time in weeks, David smiled. It wasn't wide or strong, but it was real. "Thank you." They walked back to his small apartment together. The building was old and cracked, the hallway smelled faintly of damp wood, but she didn't seem to mind. Inside, David set the groceries on the table. "I don't even know your name," he said. "Emma," she answered with a gentle smile. "And you're David, right?" "Yes," he said, surprised. "How do you know?" "I asked around the neighborhood," Emma admitted. "People said there's only one young guy living alone on this floor. It wasn't hard to find you." David laughed softly, shaking his head. "You tracked me down for this?" Emma nodded. "I couldn't forget you. I've met so many people in my life, but no one has ever done what you did yesterday. You didn't know me. You didn't ask for anything. You just helped." Her words felt heavy in his chest, filling a space he thought was long dead. They made a small dinner together with the groceries. Sitting across the tiny table, they shared stories between bites of bread and apple slices. Emma told him she had moved to New York a year ago. She spoke carefully, not giving too many details, but David could tell she carried secrets. Still, when she laughed, the room felt brighter. David told her about his lost job, his struggles, his dream of someday opening a small cafe. She listened without judgment, her eyes focused only on him. For the first time in months, David didn't feel invisible. But then, in the middle of their simple dinner, Emma's phone, an old spare she borrowed from a friend, began to ring. She picked it up, and as soon as she saw the caller ID, her smile faded. "Excuse me," she said quickly, standing and stepping into the corner of the room. David tried not to listen, but her voice was low, tense. "I told you I needed more time." "No, don't send anyone. I said I'll handle it. Please, just trust me." Her hands shook as she ended the call. She placed the phone face down on the table, avoiding David's eyes. "Is everything okay?" he asked gently. Emma forced a smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Yes. It's fine. I should go now." David stood too. "Do you need me to walk you somewhere?" She shook her head quickly. "No. Thank you, David. For tonight, for everything." Before he could say more, she slipped out of the apartment and disappeared down the hall. That night, David couldn't sleep. He kept replaying the evening in his mind, her laughter, her kindness, and then that phone call. Who was she really? Why did she sound scared? And why did she run away so suddenly, just when he felt they were finally connecting? He stared at the ceiling until morning, wondering if he'd ever see her again. The next few days passed slowly. David searched for work again, carrying his thin resume into every shop and office, but luck continued to turn its back on him. Each rejection cut deeper, but Emma's memory kept him going. Somehow, he believed their story wasn't over. And he was right. 3 nights later, David was walking home when he froze on the sidewalk. Parked in front of a tall hotel was a sleek black car with tinted windows. From the back seat stepped Emma. But she wasn't alone. 2 men in dark suits followed behind her. David's breath caught in his chest. She wasn't dressed like before. Now she wore a tailored coat, shining shoes, and a quiet confidence that didn't belong to the girl crying on the pavement. As she turned her head, their eyes met. Emma froze. Her face paled, and she whispered his name like a secret. David. The world seemed to pause around them. The cars, the people, the flashing lights of the city, all of it blurred. And in that single moment, David realized one thing. Emma wasn't who she had pretended to be. And whatever secret she was hiding was about to change everything. David stood frozen on the sidewalk, staring at Emma as she stepped out of the black car. The last time he had seen her, she was carrying groceries in a simple bag, smiling shyly in his small apartment. But now, everything about her was different. Her clothes looked expensive, her posture confident, and the 2 men in dark suits behind her screamed of wealth and power. For a moment, David thought he was mistaken. Maybe it wasn't her. Maybe it was just someone who looked like her. But then she said his name. David. Her voice was soft, but it carried enough weight to cut through the noise of the busy street. David's heart pounded. He took a step forward. Emma? What's going on? One of the men in suits moved quickly, stepping between them. Miss, is this man bothering you? Emma raised her hand. No. He's a friend. The guard gave David a cold, suspicious look before stepping aside. Emma walked toward him, her eyes full of worry and something else, fear. David's voice was low. Emma, what is this? Who are you really? She glanced at the guards, then back at him. Not here. Please. Meet me tomorrow. Same cafe where we first saw each other. Noon. Before David could ask more, the men urged her inside the hotel. The black car door closed, and within seconds, she disappeared behind glass doors and shining lights. David stood there, stunned. His chest felt heavy. He wanted answers now, but he knew he had to wait. The next day, David reached the cafe early. His stomach twisted with nerves. He kept wondering if she would actually come or if he had been played for a fool. At exactly noon, Emma arrived. This time, she was dressed casually, trying to blend in. No guards followed her. She sat across from David, her hands shaking slightly as she held her coffee. Emma, David said quietly, tell me the truth. Who are you? She looked down at the table, her voice barely above a whisper. My real name is Emma Richardson. My father is Richard Richardson, maybe you've heard of him. David's eyes widened. He knew the name. Everyone in New York did. Richard Richardson was a billionaire businessman, owner of companies that controlled hotels, airlines, and even media outlets. He was powerful, feared, and untouchable. David leaned back in shock. You're his daughter. Emma nodded slowly. Yes. But I didn't want you to know. I didn't want anyone to know. Why? David asked. Her eyes glistened as she explained. Because I'm tired of people only seeing me as his daughter. Everywhere I go, people want something from me: money, favors, connections. No one ever talks to me like I'm just Emma. David stayed quiet, listening. She continued, her voice breaking. The night you saw me, I had run away. My father and I had a fight. I wanted to know what life felt like without money, without protection. I wanted to feel real. That's when I met you. David remembered the tears in her eyes, the way she had accepted his last $5 like it was the greatest gift in the world. Emma looked straight at him. You were the first person who gave me something without asking for anything in return. Do you know how rare that is in my life? David didn't know what to say. Part of him felt betrayed she had hidden the truth. But another part of him understood. She wasn't lying to hurt him. She was desperate to be seen for who she really was. Still, he asked, why didn't you tell me sooner? Emma's lips trembled. Because I was afraid. Afraid you would change. Afraid you would walk away, or worse, treat me like everyone else. David looked at her for a long moment. Emma, I don't care about your money. But I care about honesty. Tears filled her eyes. I know. And I promise, no more secrets. But you should also know, if my father finds out about you, things will get very difficult. David frowned. Why? Emma leaned closer, her voice urgent. Because my father doesn't trust anyone. Especially men who get close to me. He believes everyone just wants his fortune. He'll think the same about you. David swallowed hard. Then what do we do? Emma reached across the table, her fingers brushing his. We stay strong. We prove him wrong. For a moment, the world outside the cafe faded. David looked into her eyes and saw something he hadn't felt in a long time: hope. But that night, as David lay in bed, doubt crept in. Could he really fight against a man like Richard Richardson? A man with power, money, and control over the city? And more importantly, was Emma worth risking everything for? His heart whispered yes. But his mind warned him this was only the beginning. David knew his life had just changed. Meeting Emma was already a miracle, but learning who she really was made things complicated. Her father, Richard Richardson, wasn't just powerful, he was feared. David had seen him on TV many times: sharp suit, cold eyes, a voice that made businessmen tremble. And now that same man would soon learn about him. 2 weeks later, the moment arrived. Emma invited David to her family's mansion. The gates alone looked taller than the buildings on David's street. Marble pillars stretched into the sky, and fountains sparkled in the evening light. David's old jacket and worn shoes felt out of place as he walked beside Emma. She squeezed his hand. Don't be nervous. Just be yourself. Yourself doesn't usually impress billionaires, David whispered back, trying to smile. Inside, the house felt more like a palace. Chandeliers glowed above polished floors. Every corner screamed of wealth. And in the center of the grand hall stood Richard Richardson. He was taller than David expected, with silver hair combed neatly back and eyes as sharp as glass. He didn't smile when they approached. So this is him, Richard said, his voice low and commanding. Emma held her breath. Dad, this is David. Richard's eyes moved from his daughter to David. The boy who gave away his last $5. David stiffened. Yes, sir. Richard studied him in silence for a long moment, then finally spoke. Kindness is easy when you have nothing to lose. But love? That requires proof. David opened his mouth to respond, but Richard raised a hand. If you want to stay near my daughter, you must prove you're not here for money. Emma frowned. Dad, that's not fair. Richard cut her off. Fairness doesn't protect family. A challenge does. He turned to David. I will give you $5,000. Start something with it. Build, create, work. If in 3 months you succeed, I'll believe you're different. If not, his eyes hardened. You will leave Emma's life forever. The room fell silent. David's heart pounded. He wasn't a businessman. He wasn't prepared. But when he looked at Emma's worried eyes, he nodded. I accept. That night, Emma stormed into her father's office. Why are you doing this? Richard leaned back in his chair calmly. Because, Emma, every man wants something. Let's see what he really wants. You're wrong about him, Emma said firmly. Richard only smiled coldly. We'll see. David didn't sleep for days. With the $5,000 Richard had given him, he rented a small space near his neighborhood. His dream had always been to open a cafe, a place filled with warmth, laughter, and comfort. Now he had the chance, though under crushing pressure. Emma supported him every step. She painted walls, set up tables, even helped him design the menu. They worked late into the night, side by side. David often caught her smiling at him as she carried boxes or wiped the counter. What? He'd ask. Nothing, she'd reply softly. Just, you're different. You don't complain. You don't give up. Her words kept him going. But Richard wasn't done. Secretly, he sent men to make things difficult. Supplies arrived late. Permits got delayed. Rumors spread that David's cafe wouldn't last a month. One evening, David returned to the cafe and found the front window smashed. The landlord threatened to cancel the lease. David's shoulders sank in defeat. Emma rushed to his side. Don't give up. This is what my father wants. He wants to see you walk away. David clenched his fists. Then I won't give him the satisfaction. Together, they cleaned the glass, fixed the damage, and reopened the next morning. Slowly, people began to notice. The cafe wasn't fancy, but it was honest. Neighbors stopped by. Kids came for cookies, workers for coffee. David greeted everyone with a smile, no matter how tired he was. The community started to love it. One night, as David and Emma locked up, he looked at her and said, "Your father thinks I'm chasing money. But the truth is, Emma, the only thing I can't lose is you." Her eyes filled with tears. She whispered back, "Then don't. No matter what he does, don't lose me." David pulled her close, and for a moment, the world outside disappeared. But far away, Richard watched reports from his men. His plan to break David was failing. Instead of collapsing, the boy was fighting harder. Richard leaned back in his chair, his fingers tapping the desk. "Interesting," he murmured. Yet deep inside, he was already planning his next move. If David survived this challenge, Richard had one more test, one final push to see if his daughter's heart truly belonged to a man with nothing. The storm was only beginning. 3 months passed quickly. David's cafe, once an empty little shop with broken chairs, had become the heart of the neighborhood. People came not only for the food but for the warmth. David greeted every customer like family. Emma was always by his side, serving coffee with a smile that lit up the room. The cafe didn't make millions, but it was alive. And for David, that was more than enough. But Richard Richardson didn't see it that way. The night before the deadline, Richard invited David to the mansion again. Emma begged her father to be fair, but his expression stayed cold. David entered the office, his hands rough from weeks of work. Richard's sharp eyes studied him. "So," Richard said, "you survived. Your little cafe is still standing. But tell me this, David, what do you really want? Because I know men like you. You'll work hard, yes. But in the end, you want money. Power. Comfort." David shook his head. "No, sir. I want none of that." Richard leaned forward. "Then what do you want?" David's voice was steady. A life where I can wake up every day and know I did something honest. A life with Emma. That's all. For the first time, Richard's cold mask slipped. There was a flicker of something in his eyes, doubt. But he quickly hid it. "We'll see about that," he muttered. The next day, Richard arrived at David's cafe without warning. He entered with two men in suits, his presence filling the small space like a storm. Customers went silent. David stood behind the counter, shocked. "Mr. Richardson." Richard walked slowly, examining every detail: the chipped tables, the smell of fresh bread, the smiling faces of customers. Then he spoke loudly, so everyone could hear. "Ladies and gentlemen, do you know who this man really is? He's trying to prove himself to me. He thinks he can win my daughter with this little cafe. Tell me, would you trust him?" The room froze. All eyes turned to David. Before he could answer, a woman at the back spoke. "Trust him. He gave me free soup when I had no money." Another man stood up. "He watched my kid when I was late for work." More voices rose. "He fixed my order even when I couldn't pay. He's the only one in this neighborhood who cares." Soon the cafe filled with voices defending David. The people stood around him, forming a wall against Richard's cold judgment. Emma walked in at that moment. She saw the scene, her heart racing. Without hesitation, she moved to David's side and took his hand. "Dad," she said firmly, "look around. This is what you couldn't see. He didn't build this cafe for money. He built it for people. For dignity. For love." Richard's jaw tightened. "And you think that's enough for my daughter?" Emma's voice broke with emotion. "Yes. Because if he can give his last $5 to a stranger, he can give his whole life to the person he loves. That's me." The room went silent. David felt Emma's hand gripping his, strong and certain. Richard stared at them both for a long time. His lips pressed together, and his eyes softened just a little. Finally, he exhaled. "You remind me of your mother," he told Emma quietly. "She also believed love was stronger than money." Emma's eyes widened. "Then why are you fighting so hard against it?" Richard closed his eyes for a moment, then looked at David. "Because I didn't want to lose you, Emma. I thought protecting you meant controlling you. But maybe I was wrong." He turned toward David. "You passed my challenge. Not because of this cafe, but because of the people standing with you. And because, you never gave up." David swallowed hard. "Does that mean?" Richard raised a hand. "It means, you have my blessing. Treat her well, or you'll answer to me." The cafe erupted with cheers. Emma threw her arms around David, tears of joy running down her face. Weeks later, the cafe grew even stronger, now supported openly by the Richardson name. But David never changed the menu, never raised prices, never forgot the nights when he had nothing. Every morning, he and Emma opened the doors together. She often teased him, saying, "All this because of $5. And David would smile, kissing her forehead. "No. All this because of you." The world outside rushed on, rich, poor, powerful, weak. But inside that cafe, love and kindness ruled. And what had begun as a simple act of giving his last $5 had turned into something unbelievable, a love story strong enough to change not only their lives, but even the heart of a man who once believed only in money.